Imagine the Great British Bake Off, but someone's knitting with trash bags, the group challenge is a lace lampshade, and one of the judges is wearing a knitted swatch on her head, like a tiny flag. That's episode 6 of The Game of Wool. This week is Statement Week. We are down to the final 5 knitters, and the semifinals are looming just ahead. This week, we finally get what appears to be our first true technical knitting challenge, and somehow it just makes the rest of the show look so much worse. As we inch closer to the show's finale, it's hard to forget that the show comes with no prize money, no book deal, no yarn line promised to the winner, just the title Britain's Best Knitter, and the privilege of spending weeks away from your family and your income under brutal conditions to produce content for Channel 4. This week's theme is statement jewelry, statement lighting. Now in the real world, statement piece doesn't mean as loud and colorful and bold and over the top as is humanly possible to make, but in this show, it certainly does. Because creating something understated, it might as well be invisible. So maximalism. Keep that in mind as we talk about Challenge 1, because it's just another example about how this show doesn't really know what it wants from knitters except for more, even if it ruins the design. Challenge 1 is statement jewelry, and knitters have 10 hours to create a coordinated jewelry set with a necklace and a matching bracelet or cuff. Lydia decides to make a jewelry set inspired by the necklaces worn in parts of Africa. She uses black and gold mercerized cotton, and she uses a combination of mosaic crochet and open work lace to create a beautiful collar. She beads the entire thing with a 0.6mm crochet hook that's really tiny, placing beads individually on her stitches. Lydia runs a yarn brand with her sister. It's called Weku Yarn, and Weku means yarn in Ga, the language of Lydia's Ghanaian heritage. And yet, 6 episodes in, there's been no mention of her yarn brand. And I understand if the show is hesitant to highlight a small business like Weku Yarn because they've partnered with this big private equity firm, but I have to imagine at least part of Lydia's motivation for coming on the show was to bring awareness and more eyes to her brand. Why don't we do it right now? Weku Yarn is Lydia's yarn brand. If you are looking to support one of the contestants on the show in a very real and concrete way, you can purchase yarn from Lydia's yarn brand, and I will link her website down below. Back to Lydia's necklace. Now, Lydia freestyles this complex crocheted beaded piece. Lydia goes to extreme lengths to make sure this piece is perfect. She even blocks the piece, which is the first example of blocking we've seen on the show, and then she rips back a few rows to just make sure they lie exactly perfectly on the mannequin. And then, shockingly for this show, Di loves it. She calls it elegant with a perfect sense of proportion. Di says this has worked really well. Lydia looks delighted, to the point of disbelieving. Like the contestants have been trained at this point to just prepare themselves for negativity when they step up to the judges. The piece is stunning, but it's telling why Di chose to like this one the best. Di literally frames it in terms of herself. She says, this is something that I would wear. She even goes ahead and puts the wristlet bracelet on her hand and says, I would reach for this every day. This is the perfect example as to why the judging on this show has felt so frustrating this whole time. Because if Di likes it, it's good, but if she doesn't like it, it's bad, regardless of whether you met the brief. Now, Holger being Holger, he shows up with something out of the box. He has gone ahead and made yarn out of bin bags. It's funny because the voiceover tries to paint this as this super out of the box choice, but even Holger says, anybody who's gone to art school has made something out of bin bags. And if you're in the knitting world, you might have heard of this as plarn. Holger is inspired by Victorian jet jewelry, pieces that emulate the fashion of Queen Victoria following the passing of Prince Albert. And given what the challenges have looked like up to this point, is he making a quiet dig at the show, saying, I see your trash briefs, and I'm gonna make this one out of literal trash? It's hard to not hear just a whisper of dissent in a garbage bag statement necklace on a show that has turned knitting into such a punchline. Judging-wise, Sheila praises the material as interesting. She points out the subtle sheen and color in the shiny black garbage bags, and then Di goes in. She wishes that the bracelet had white in it. And this is feedback that she gave when walking around the room. She wanted Holger to incorporate more than just one color into his bracelet. During judging, she says the bracelet makes her anxious and she just wanted more drama. So we are now at a point where using trash bags to make Victorian mourning jewelry is not enough of a statement because Di doesn't like a monochromatic approach. Isaac goes the opposite direction. He makes a daisy chain necklace and bracelet inspired by an idea from his girlfriend. And he creates one large daisy right in the center of the necklace with 2 petals hanging from beaded strings. It's very young, very fresh, and very wearable. But Di's reaction? Not dramatic enough. Not enough Impact. She claims he hasn't gone wild with materials and it feels too restrained. She also feels that the bracelet is over fussy and detracts from the main event. She says she's relieved to see those 2 petals hanging from those beaded strings, and she says to Isaac, once I'd come up with that idea, I would have thrown the whole rest of the thing out and started over. This piece is too restrained overall, but over fussy. It's impossible feedback to give a designer. Isaac's design is wearable with a little black dress for a night out or with a sundress on the beach. It is the type of thing a real person would actually want to wear, but because it does not scream from across the barn, it isn't statement enough for the judges. Ailsa designs a set inspired by Scottish landscape. She uses green I-cords and weaves and braids them to create a Scottish-inspired knot, and then she utilizes purple yarn to create thistle-inspired elements. Her bracelet is in matching colors and features a wire circle in the center. This set finds the perfect balance between complexity and simplicity. And Ailsa even says, this may not be statement enough, but it's a statement for me. To Ailsa, a statement is something that means something to her and stands out in a quiet, specific way. But the judges don't see it. They immediately wish that she had chosen a more impactful yarn than mercerized cotton. What do they want? Fun fur? Boucle? Chunky yarn again? What exactly would have served this design better than mercerized cotton for clean, crisp, braided I-cords? They also want more purple threaded throughout the I-cords. They want a wire medallion on the necklace to tie it back to the bracelet. The fact that the piece is understated, wearable, and still eye-catching counts for nothing. Again, they're not judging to the brief. They're judging to what Di would find exciting if she saw it in a shop or on the runway. Simon goes big. He decides to learn an entirely new technique for this challenge, Viking knitting. He knits a wire chain, adds a heart motif, and then bends out of wire the molecular structure of oxytocin, the love hormone, and he dedicates the whole thing to his wife. This is exactly what the show claims to want: a personal story, a visual impact, and a really interesting use of material and techniques. Sheila commends his use of the material, and then we get Di's feedback. She says to him, "It feels like you just decided what you wanted to do and then you did it." Yeah, is that a compliment? It kind of just reads as a fact. And then we get into the nitpicks. She claims that the oxytocin molecule doesn't marry with the heart. It is literally the love hormone wrapped into a love-themed jewelry set. If that doesn't marry as a theme, I don't know what does. Simon does everything the judges say they want. He learns a new technique. He's using unconventional materials. He executes everything excellently. And his theme is really great. And the judges still aren't impressed. Even when someone goes fully maximalist, new skill, new materials, new technique, new approach, the judges find a way to say, this just isn't enough for us. At this point, Britain's Best Knitter feels like a moving target defined by one judge's personal style. And after all that, the show whips us into Challenge 2, which is somehow both the fairest and the most emotionally brutal challenge that we've seen yet on the show. After bin bags, beads, and daisies, we get Challenge 2, lace lighting. For the first time all season, we get one chart, one yarn, one clear standard, and true blind judging. We get one nice historical line about Shetland lace knitters holding their knitting up to the fire to check for any mistakes, and we learn that the pineapple motif incorporated into the swatch that each of these knitters are making is a traditional Shetland motif. I loved this history. I wish there was so much more of it throughout the show. I think that this is something that knitters have been thirsty to see, and I really wish that we had history throughout every single challenge. Knitters are each asked to knit a traditional Shetland lace pattern. 80 rows of 66 stitches. They are all using the same linen yarn, and this allows for this challenge to actually be judged blind. This is actual knitting. Not a crochet deck chair, not a swimsuit, not a sofa cover. It was the first time in 6 episodes that the show has asked knitters to do something that's core to the craft. Follow a pattern. It's the only true blind judging we've seen. 5 identical panels with the same lace chart and the same yarn, the same time constraints. The only meaningful variable is skill. And for once, the judging reflects that. Isaac comes in first place. He's praised for his stitch evenness and for his open work, and he's never even done lace before. Ailsa comes in third place. She had some trouble with the time restriction, and she was hurrying towards the end and made some mistakes, and the judges cannot hold back their shock and disappointment that she didn't come in the top 2.
Were you expecting her to be better in the lighting panel?
I really was.
I was really quite surprised.
This is the first feedback all season where viewers at home can look at what's being said and say, yes, I see why that feedback is being given. And there were logical, technical reasons for the results. The knitters in the top 3 places used Lifelines. The knitters in the bottom 2 did not. And Isaac, who has never knit lace before, talks about his experience of following a chart.
And what about you, Isaac? How are you finding your first time doing lace?
I kind of thrive on having very direct instruction.
Yeah.
So each row that I look at, I'm like, okay, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that, and then it's just sort of building.
Yeah, he's the furthest ahead. He's never done it before. You little Hermione Granger, you.
What?
It sends a message that lace is not as intimidating as you might think. It's just about following instructions. This is what happens when you have a real technical knitting challenge. The work speaks for itself. We don't get feedback about whether the seasoning on a bagel is uneven or whether something is or is not Dai's personal style. You can see whether the lace column is off. You can see if there's a missed yarn over, something is correct or it is not. There's no pressure to create a spectacle. It's just about knitting skill. If Game of Wool had had one technical challenge like this per week, I think the entire show's reception would have been different. It feels so refreshing to finally see a technical knitting challenge on this show, and I can't believe it took us 11 challenges to get to this one. Episode 6 is the first episode that has given us a challenge that shows how regular knitters work, but it's also the episode that's made it the most obvious the show has no idea how to talk about knitting. Because instead of leaning into the actual drama around lace knitting, counting your stitches, losing your place, following a chart, they create a dramatic storyline around needle selection. We get this dramatic moment where Tom solemnly announces that the knitters will now have to choose their needles. And he explains that straight needles are apparently better for seeing your stitches and circular needles can hold more stitches, which technically is true, but isn't really relevant here since every knitter's working with the same stitch count. This is the first episode where the show has really leaned in to choosing your materials as a variable. Up until now, there's been no discussion of where these needles are coming from. And while a majority of the knitters choose circular needles, Holger chooses straight needles. And the show really emphasizes that, Holger chose straight needles. Let's see how this plays out for the rest of the knitters who chose circulars. And then Lydia starts struggling, and it is obvious to any knitter watching exactly what's going wrong here. Her circular needles have a bad join. She's not able to get the stitches off the cable and up onto the needle tip.
They just get stuck, and then they don't move onto the needle. That's my problem.
But because the people behind the show don't understand knitting, they frame this needle choice as a morality play. Holger chose right. He chose straight needles. And Lydia chose wrong because she chose circular needles. And Lydia does end up switching to straight needles, not because they're the superior choice for lace, but because they just don't have a join, so it eliminates that issue for her. A different brand of circular needle would have proven to have no issue with knitting lace as long as the join was smooth enough and the tips were sharp. I think the writers and editors behind the show just don't know enough about knitting to highlight that this was a bad needle join. Or they ignored it because it didn't fit into the narrative and the storyline they wanted to tell. Lydia did end up switching to straight needles, but not because they are a superior choice for lace, because they happen to have no join. And the only needles provided to her in the barn were ones that didn't have a join smooth enough to knit what she was making. Now here's the part that's harder to talk about because the edit doesn't seem to understand you can't separate the technique from the conditions. The environment affects the craft. And while the lace challenge itself was excellent, the conditions surrounding it were painful. During the lace challenge, Lydia starts crying. And it's not a cutesy little oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed crying. These are real sobs. She is clearly in distress. And the other contestants in the barn are all clearly very worried about her. Simon puts his own knitting down to help her count her stitches, and Lydia has to step out into the yarn barn and swap out her needles. The thing is, Lydia's upset is not because lace knitting is hard or she can't read a chart or even because her needles are bad. It's something much bigger than that. This episode was being filmed on Mother's Day, and Lydia has 2 young children at home. Lydia has been doing her best, grinding through weeks of nonsensical briefs, with unpredictable judging. She is finally in a challenge that actually demonstrates true knitting skill, and she hits a breaking point. And the show keeps all of it in. I understand this is a reality show, it's meant for our entertainment, but this moment felt just too personal to share on screen. There's a big difference between dramatic background music while someone's sewing on a button and watching a person crumble in front of you in a way that feels deeply personal. This didn't feel like a scene that was necessary to include in the show. It didn't feel like it moved the storyline of the episode forward, and it makes me wonder again, who is the target audience for this show? Who wants to see someone breaking in this way? Is it knitters? Is it non-knitters? Is it new knitters? Is it people unrelated to the craft? Like, who wants to see someone in this much pain on a craft reality show? We saw Meadow slowly deflate over the first 2 episodes of the show. We saw Stephanie in serious upset and distress when she was eliminated. We saw Gordon feeling extremely upset after his elimination in episode 1. And Isaac has looked more and more distressed each week. I am genuinely concerned for him. And now we see Lydia deeply upset on Mother's Day, just breaking down in the yarn barn, and we don't see anyone going to comfort her. And what is the message that this scene is meant to send about knitting? That knitting lace will bring you to your breaking point, will make you burst out in sobbing tears? The mental health of the contestants on this show is not an afterthought. It is a real concern. And the show doesn't seem to be taking it seriously. In the credits at the end of the show, we see the name of a consultant clinical psychologist. And my question is, where is that person? Because we don't see their impact in the episodes of the show. We see contestants becoming more and more distressed, more and more deflated week after week. It feels like the show is creating an environment that is emotionally wrought for the contestants on the show without caring for their well-being. The silver lining of the lace challenge is we got to see what this show could have been from the start. We have a lace challenge with a real technique and real knitting, following a pattern, following a chart. We see the variables isolated, so everyone's using the same yarn in the same time frame, and the judging can truly be blind. In a design challenge, it's kind of obvious who designed what. Like, we knew that Isaac made the yellow smiley face sweater without knowing that it was him. We knew that the sweater that was knit from cuff to cuff was probably Ailsa and Holger, but in a lace panel challenge, it can truly be blind. The lace challenge had historical context and learning moments, and yet it highlighted how the show's structure and painting are emotionally grinding down the contestants in the show. And the worst part is the emotional cost of everything that's led us to this point is visible on each contestant's face. This week, Big Knitter goes to Lydia. Di cries, Lydia cries, but the difference is Lydia's tears feel real, they feel cathartic, they feel like release, and Di's tears feel performative because she attributes them to the first time she's seen something perfect on this show. What about all the other incredible pieces that have been made in the previous challenges?
It's the first time I felt something's perfect. So, the big knitter this week is Lydia.
Oh, Lydia!
And then Simon is cast off. And here's where the irony hits hard, because Tom says to Simon, "You've done so much good for the world of knitting, breaking stereotypes." Now, Simon is a veteran, he's a construction worker, he learned how to do Viking knitting for the show, and Tom is essentially saying, "You've proven that anyone can knit." And then they eliminate him in the very same breath, in an episode where he did exactly what was being asked of him. He took big risks, he told a story, he used innovative materials, and it still wasn't enough. Simon speaks to the camera. He calls his experience on the show stressful and emotional, full of highs and lows. And when the rest of the contestants are comforting Simon, he still manages to crack a joke. He says, "I'm not dead," which brings everyone a smile. Simon's elimination is a gut punch because it really feels like Simon has been leveling up each episode. He's been achieving amazing things in crochet, a medium he learned for the show, but due to the judges' biases and preferences, he was eliminated anyway because they already decided that he wasn't going to be the show's winner. It ends up feeling like Simon was cast as a token participant, there to break stereotypes, but by episode 6 he'd served his purpose, so it was time to let him go, regardless of the amazing work he's been producing in each episode. So here's the bigger picture about episode 6. Episode 6 does 2 things at once. It delivers our first real, fair, technical knitting challenge, but it also makes the rest of the show's design choices impossible to ignore. This show doesn't know what it wants from its contestants. Understated, wearable, coherent work like Ailsa's necklace or Isaac's daisies gets picked to pieces for not being bold enough, but bold, innovative conceptual work like Simon's oxytocin necklace gets nitpicked to death. If we had seen more technical challenges like this lace challenge throughout the show, it would have made the entire competition feel a lot more fair. But even more important than the logic behind the challenge design is the emotional health of the contestants inside of them. Because from episode to episode, we've seen the emotional health of the contestants dramatically decline. At this point, none of the contestants look like they're having a good time, and this is all for a show that offers no prize money, no compensation for the designs that are being made into kits, no book deal, no yarn brand tie-in. they're getting nothing but the title of Britain's Best Knitter and a sheep badge, maybe. Next week is the semifinal. We'll see contestants turning charity shop knits into catwalk couture and turning rags into bags. So we're finally touching on a sustainability angle, which audiences have been pushing for, so I'm very curious to see how that plays out. But given how this show has handled every other big topic so far, I'm cautiously pessimistic. It could be interesting, but it could also just be another week where they had an opportunity to showcase knitting and picked a stunt instead. I'll go live again to watch and react to the semifinals, so check the link in the description for a link to that video. If you want to vent in real time with other knitters who understand, I would love for you to join me. And let me know in the comments, did the lace challenge feel as refreshing to you as it did for me? And if you were designing other technical challenges for the show, what would you pick? And now that we are 6 episodes into this show, if there was a second season that was announced, would you be willing to compete? Would you apply to be on the show, or would you not consider it given everything that we know? I'm curious. I've really been enjoying watching and breaking the show down with all of you. Reading your comments has become a highlight of my week, so thank you all for engaging with me, for talking this show through with me, for sharing your thoughts and analysis and feedback. And I'm definitely curious what you thought about this episode, so I'll be checking the comments for your thoughts. As always, it's been really fun to talk about knitting with you today, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!